Tiffy from LogicMills, and in this video, I'm going to be explaining how to play the game Garden Wars. Now, this is a team game. So for this game, you may either have 4 players or 6 players, and each team is a pair, so you can have 2 on 2 or 2v2v2, up to 6 players. Now, for this game, you have boards. To begin, you'll give 1 to each player, and you also have a deck of square tiles. Setup for this game is to shuffle all of the cards together and give 4 cards to each player. The objective of this game is to have the highest score possible. Now, remember, this is a team game, and there are a couple of different ways that you can score this. As a teacher, you may decide or have your students play this a couple times with the different scoring variants. Now, once you have dealt 4 cards to each player, you then have your cards just, I recommend, spread out in the middle as a draw pile. For this game, now the cards that I've dealt out are the exact same that you see in front of you, and I'm just going to describe how they all work in order to get into how to play the game. Now, in this game, you're going to be building trees. When you think about a tree, you gotta think about how it's formed. So the different parts of it when you go from the bottom to the top. You have roots on the bottom, followed by the trunk, and then the branches and the leaves at the very top. When you're building, you have to build from the bottom to the top. You can't have, roots. You can't have the leaves followed by the roots. That doesn't make sense. And when you're looking at the cards, I have 2 different types of trees. You have positive points and negative points. Each of them have numbers in the corner. Go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When you're playing these cards, they have to go largest on the bottom and then smaller on top. So for example, if I had the 5 down, I could play any of these cards. They do not have to be in subsequent order. So for example, I could have the 5 down and play the 4, or I could play a 2 on top. Just as long as when you're playing cards, you have the card be smaller than the one on the bottom. When you're building it, you can mix between positives and negatives. So for example, I have the positive 5. I could legally have a negative 4 on top of it. This is okay because the 4 is smaller than the 5. I could then have another negative 3, I could have a positive 2, and I could have the positive 1. All of this would be fine. The only thing to note is there's no duplicates. So you cannot place another 1 on top of the 1. You cannot play a 4 on a 4, whether they be positive or negative. So if, let's say, go back to here, my negative 3, I could be like, I want to make it positive. I will play, I cannot play my 3 on top of a 3. But there is a way to make this positive by adding little accoutrements or accessories to your tree. This is to increase your points for that tree. Over here, you can see these pink cards. I have a 5, a 4, a 3, and a 2. Now, these are slightly different because they aren't part of the tree. What they are is they go in between the layers of the trees. When I'm playing these cards, they have to be played on the same number, okay? Tree pieces have to be played on on a larger number. These pieces have to be played on the same number. So let's say I have a 3 here. I can only play my 3 for the accessory. I cannot play my 2. I cannot play my 4. I can only play the +3. Same if I had the +3 positive card, I am allowed to only play this +3 card. On top of that, I can play the +2 positive tree card. Or I could have played the -2 card. So you continue building up all these layers of positive tree pieces, negative tree pieces, and accessories following these rules. Then at the very end, you kind of look at all the layers and you see how much your tree totals to. All right. Now, let's look at the other cards that I have here. Okay. Sorry, this was very neatly arranged before, but here you go. Okay. Over here, when you look at your board, you have 3 places that you can build these trees. So over here, you're going to be playing these cards. If you look over here, I have 3 extra cards. These are kind of like a bonus. You don't have to play them, and not everybody needs to or will, but they can be a really nice way to either sabotage or gain a few extra points. Now, in order to play these, you have to start from the bottom to the top. There are only 3 layers: the seeds, the leaves, and the rose bush. In order to play in the square, you have to play the seeds. After that, you can play the leaves, and then only may you play the rose bush. You cannot play the seeds followed by the rose bush. How are you supposed to have roses without the leaves first? But by the end of the game, this can just have 1 card on it. It may have 2, it may have 3. The only thing to note is how many points they're worth. So even though you may want to have those nice juicy +15 and +10 points at the end, it does always have to have that -10. So if you were to total all these up, at the end it would be -5 +10 +15, which is 20 points. Last 2 cards to look at are the ladybug and the hatchet. Okay, let's say I've been building a very nice little tree over here. Then I have the ladybug on top. Now, wouldn't you say this ladybug is very cute? Well, I would agree. So with the ladybug, you cannot squish them, which means no playing a card on top of a ladybug. If this is here, I cannot play a card and nobody else can play a card on top of it. This can either be used defensively or offensively, depending on your strategy. In order to get rid of this card, you must spend a turn to remove it. It is then discarded and gone for the rest of the game. You can only remove a ladybug on your own board. So even if my partner had a ladybug on their board and they don't want it, they have to spend their own turn to remove it. In contrast, this is a hatchet or an axe, and it's used to chop down any of the cards. It can be used on your own board or anybody else's. And what it does is it removes the top card in any pile. So I can use it on a ladybug, or let's say I had the -2 and I'm like, bleh, I don't want that -2. I can use it to get rid of it and it's discarded. Or let's say my partner sees it, you're like, bleh, don't want it, so they can chop it, get rid of it. Okay, these are all of the cards. Now, how do you play? So, once you have all the cards together and shuffled, you begin the game, each person with 4 cards in their hand and the rest in the middle. On your turn, you play and discard. You may play 1 card. So let's say, in this case, or let's say I had a tree piece, I can play this card, and then I draw 1 card. So your hand will always have 4 cards in it. After this, it's the end of my turn, it's the next person's turn. They may either do the same thing, play a card and draw a card, or they may discard. When you discard, you can discard up to 4 cards. So you can either just throw away 1 or throw away all 4 and then draw back to a hand of 4. Then it's the end of my turn, next player's turn. Then they can go ahead, continue building. Remember, when you're playing a card, you can either play on your own or somebody else's board. Because it's a team game, you can help out your partner by putting a nice positive points on them, or you can maybe attack your opponents using a negative card. At the end of the game, game ends when you have 3 tree tops. So on anybody's board, once they have 3 either positive or negative or mix placed down on their 3 spots, game ends. So these are either the +1 or the negative ones. They could potentially have a whole square with just this treetop on it, and that still counts as a completed tree. If let's say it's like this, as soon as somebody plays this card here, whether it be myself or somebody else, game ends. This can be, in this case I have 3 positive treetops. It won't always be like that, but game will end. The other way that the game ends is once the final card has been drawn from the center pile and there are no more cards left. Okay, now remember how I talked about, this being a team game and there are a couple different ways to score? Well, there are actually 3 ways to score. Now, depending on what your teacher chose, it'll be one of these 3 things. You may either play, so it's the highest combined score. Okay, that means when you look at your pieces, you total up everything. Simple arithmetic. If there's plus points, you add it. If it's negative, you take it away from your score. In this case, it'll be 3 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, which is 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Trust me, this is very nice not to have any negatives. For sure, as the game goes by, you are going to accumulate some negative points. Okay, let's say I have these down. 4, I have a 5 and a 1, maybe some here. Okay. And okay. So let's say in this case I have -4 plus 3, -1, -1, -2, and then I have a -5 plus 5 plus 1. So I am at a score of 1. So -5 plus 5 plus 1 -4 plus 3 -1 -1. Is that right? No, it's -1. Yes, -1. Now everybody will look at their boards. Let's say I'm playing with the amazing Samantha and her score is 7 minus -1. So our total score will be 6. Then the other team could have a total score of 11. Somebody else is 20. Then the team of 20 would win. That is the first way to score. The second way to score is if, let's say, I'm playing with Samantha, her score is 7 minus -1. You take the highest of the pair, and that's our score. So in this case, it would be 7. Let's say George and John, they had 2 and 2. Their score would be 2. Let's say we had a 20 and a 21. Their score would be 21. And again, the team of 21 would win. The third way to score is the lowest of the pair. So again, Samantha had 7, I had -1. Our team score would be -1. For the 2 and 2, their score would be 2. For the 20 and 21, their score would be 20. So these are the 3 different ways that you can score the board. It's very important for in the beginning of the lesson to choose one method, tell students because obviously it would affect the kind of strategy for the game, and then they play with it. If you have time, it would be amazing to play it as a couple different rounds, play one of each method, or whichever one you may see fit for your students. Thank you very much. Bye.